We is great. One of the things we're starting with is a new for Syracuse University doing a cogen plant, a power plant. That's
speak about that. Speak about that for a little bit.
Here's where something like this goes, which is it was a competition, invited, and the competition was we said, "Oh, we're changing our power plant, and the community is restless, and we better get an architect on board so that the building looks good and the community can work with the building." And we came in and said, "That's nice, but that's not really going to do it. You don't engage a community by how a building looks. You engage a community by how a building works. So we have to change the program if you want to do this." So we proposed a series of urban agriculture, greenhouses using the waste heat from the power plant, bringing the community into that as a learning experience and a sharing experience. Unfortunately, as one might guess, where's the power plant but located in one of the lowest income neighborhoods of Syracuse? So there's a real need. It is a food desert. There's a real need for this interaction. We won the competition at the same time, and this is where innovation, when it gets the right allies, it drives its own momentum. We came in with those ideas. The university had just hired some new people in their Falk College of Human Sciences who were world experts in urban agriculture. They got engaged. Everybody's excited about the project. And at this stage now, we've taken over one of the old turbine buildings, and it's actually going to become an academic building where people from the university will be housed, faculty, teachers, researchers that are engaged in the social interaction with the community, the social sciences, food sciences, teaching kitchen, how they can be a local food resource relative to local things going around. It's just terrific.
The great thing about that project, it ties into everything that you said about what architecture is. Because on different levels, it's a generator. Mm-hmm. It's a literal generator. It's a community generator. It's an agricultural generator, a food generator, for lack of a better term. And so it's hard to deny something like that.
And in the end, it will also be beautiful. But that's not the be all and end all.
That's not the starting point.
That's not the starting point. Is to say, what kind of form can I make? First, what impact can I make, and how does the form play into that? And that's where that'll go. So that's very cool. And we're also just won a project with Kate Orff from Scape. We do a lot of work with landscape architects.
Yeah,
I noticed that. Talked about that, but a very, very collaborative sensibility, and I love to cross disciplines because you learn so much. And this is up in Minneapolis on the Mississippi River for a new park and park structures.
The water park, right?
It's called Waterworks, and it's on the site of all the old mill ruins around the original waterfalls, which was of course, all the hydraulic power for the industrialization of that part of the country.
Now, what was your attraction to that particular project? Because I've had my experiences with sort of parks, like water parks and that stuff, and it's very, in a lot of ways, it's very superficial sometimes. And why did you want to pursue that particular project?
I think that's very interesting because parks, first time I ever did a park was actually in Wyoming. And I had a client from other work who was trying to donate a large 10-acre parcel right in the middle of the city to be a park. And the park said, we don't want it, it's too steep to mow. Like the conception of what a park is. And so we reimagined it with indigenous species, xeriscape planting, talking about, a park doesn't have to be, if it's a way that creates 3 new shortcuts through the city and links to other green spaces, that's enough. It doesn't have to be a spectacle, right? It has to perform, and you test it and understand how can this perform in the city as a piece of open space. And the one in Minneapolis is, here's this recovering waterfront. You know, it was the source of industrialization, not unlike here in New York. The waterfront was the industrialization. That's gone. And you have some residences and cultural facilities creeping back to the water. And so what you want to do is create a place that solves for the delights of the city in terms of open space. You know, and like the challenges are going to see. So what does a park do in Minneapolis in January? And how do you become more aware of the river because this park is there? How do you start thinking about the ecology of the river because this park is there? There's a big lock that the Army Corps runs that used to take, you know, barges would be lined up for a mile up and down river waiting to get through to make it through the locks. Now there's a couple of boats a day. They think they may close it because it has to do with the invasion of the Asian carp. You know, and so how does the park play a role in letting you understand and feel these relationships with the river?
So essentially what you're talking about, and I don't know why this came to my head, I thought immediately of their Apple store they have a store on 14th Street where they have this sort of spiral stairs. And it's very nice and sculptural. But the problem to me as an architect is looking at it and saying, as I'm walking up the stairs, I'm looking down at my foot because you're going to the spiral, and the idea as an architect of a stair is that the stair is supposed to it's supposed to be spatial in the sense that you walk up the stairs and you're able to look around and feel that you're within a space. And what you're saying with this project is that, and with that earlier park project, is that you want to be able to have people understand that this is a space, a unique space, you know. And like you said with the generator project, it doesn't start with how it looks. It starts with this is a unique space. Let's explore it together. Explore it together. In the beginning, as an architect, you were exploring it, you designed it, and people who now come and occupy that space, they go, all right, let's explore this new space together. Is that what you're talking about?
It is, and it's, you know, it occurs to me because when you're talking about it and I'm thinking about these places, and it starts from a kind of process of digging deep and loving what you're tackling, whether it in Cody was a gravel mine to turn into a park, or the abandoned mill building sites on the Mississippi. And I'm bringing this back to your early question, which is, what is your architecture? And in the sense that some architects, when you hire them, you know exactly what you're going to get. You mentioned the Richard Meyer book. You're going to get a white building. It's going to be gridded in one form or another, and it'll have 2 or 3 geometric moves that oppose the grid. And I don't mean to oversimplify, but it's what's there.
Yes.
Right? It's what you're going to get. And I've always been challenged in interview situations when people say, what am I going to get? Because I don't know. I don't know yet. And it's inconceivable to me that I would do the same thing in Oklahoma City that I would do in Cody, Wyoming, that I would do in Minneapolis. That my thinking process and team of thinkers would come up with the same solution for those 3 things, or a building that was formulaically similar for those. It's just not possible for me.
Now, I'm going to go a little deeper here. I said I was going to wrap up, but I can't let this go. Now, what you're saying is very un-American, because in America, you find the formula and you replicate it over and over again. So
that's McDonald's,
right?
You know, and
but you and again, I'm not passing judgment on Richard Meyer or even Frank Gehry, but people go, that's a Frank Gehry building, and that's, you know, oh, that's the Bilbao Museum, and there is something like the Bilbao Museum in upstate New York. It looks like that. That's great. That's Frank Gehry. When you come into a project and you're trying to make it unique, it's very difficult for the uninitiated to see Robert Rogers in that project. Is that
it may be a hindrance because in terms of branding,
yes,
there's the obvious attributes of repetitive form making. And I understand that. I understand that that may be a shortcoming for me, but I'm not obsessed with form. I like it. The form comes in the second or third layer of thinking, not the first layer for me. And I think it would be artificial in my process to do otherwise.
You couldn't do otherwise.
I don't. And when I teach and I go into studios and they're all about form, and it's like, a shape is not an idea. Where's the idea? Right. Quit telling me about the shape.
Yeah.
What's the idea?
Yeah.
And that's where I come from. I'm not driven to form making for form making's sake.
So how is that now opposed to I Am Pei? I Am Pei was big on form
and rigorous formal geometric form, and he was brilliantly inventive within that. It gave him a beautiful brand. It also gave him a way to exercise and dig long, deep, qualitative development of those forms and iterations of those forms and iterations of those forms. And that's the benefit of that kind of approach, because, I would say, yes, a formal geometric solution is correct in the middle of the Louvre, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in Dallas. And that was his language. And I don't know, maybe as I mature in practice and architecture, there will develop more consistency of form. I'm beginning to see it between a couple of projects now, actually. Not intentional, but just sort of, I tested that, I'm going to test it again a little bit. But it still is not, it's not my first move.
So you're seeing a refinement, basically.
Yeah, well, I hope so. What are you going to, you don't want to do the same thing forever. And you want to, hopefully, you're always getting better.